is the XR Motion Podcast with your hosts, Michael Steinberg and Andrew Hogue.
Welcome back to the XR Motion Podcast, where we go over everything AR, VR, 3D, motion graphics, NFTs, if that's still a thing, I don't know, and metaverse, you name it, we go over it. It is so good to be back. Andrew, how are you doing today?
I'm good, man. I'm also very excited to be back. I can't believe that it's been a couple months, but it's kind of nice because now I feel like we're setting the seasons off a little bit. We're starting a new season of XR Motion, and what a better way to start a new season with a guest that I am very excited for the world to hear more about, which we were lucky enough to have her on a panel that we did at the Greenpoint Film Festival this year, where we talked about a lot of the craziness that's happening in the future of technology in this sort of motion design 3D space right now. And I've said it before, but I'll say it again. I mean, I think when we talk about being excited about future technologies and the impact it might have on storytelling and how we can connect with audiences, I think Yiting is an incredible user of those sort of platforms to kind of push that narrative storytelling and build a lot of empathy with audiences. So I'm very excited to have her on. With that, Yiting, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us how you're doing.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me on, Mikey and Andrew, and thank you so much for the introduction. Hi, my name is Yiting. I'm a developer manager at CR Partners, and I'm leading the spatial computing team where we deploy XR-related simulations and trainings for enterprises. And currently, I'm also making customized AI solutions for internal projects.
Wow. That's the dream title right there. Absolutely love that.
Thank you.
Creative technologist. It's like what we all want to be, but we're just not quite there yet. It's like I'm still just using my computer for everything.
So do I.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit on the topic of sort of technology, right? So what does that mean, creative technologist? Does that mean that you're someone who's kind of constantly toying with like the bleeding edge of technology? Are you sort of researching how some of these new technologies might be useful? Why don't you just like break down a little bit about what that looks like?
So for creative technologist is I consider more like the world is my platform and there's no limits. There's no like strict rules saying that you have to stick with Unity or you have to stick with certain platforms. And for me is once you have an idea and you try to figure out the most efficient pipeline to work with it, and with AI you can just ask ChatGPT to see what kind of pipeline makes the most sense. Because I know a lot of people starting out, they don't want to put in a lot of money, and I'm very low budget friendly. I do not want to spend any money. So I would try to figure out open source tools and figure out how to incorporate them into my pipeline so that I can come up with the customized solution based on the idea that I want to make.
Wow.
I'm
awesome.
so I'm curious. Can you maybe walk us through day to day and your workflow, or maybe a project that you've worked on recently?
Yes. Actually, I'm very proud of the project that I worked on recently. Is for internal tool, but I think it's gonna be very it can be scaled and then it can be a customized solution for future clients as well. So basically, the design team wants to automate their process, but we only have a few number of designers, and a lot of people who know of design do not actually know a lot of specific design tools. Those are non-designers who can do some marketing related branding. So I was asked to think of a solution to help them have the image input but output a different styled image. So I digged into the open source situation, and basically they wanted to convert image into ASCII art, and then the style, so that all the style is cohesive, all the images they generate will be in ASCII. But they also wanted a specific branding color. And the issue is the open source tool does not have any customized parameters for you to choose. Oh, I want the font size to be bigger. Oh, I want the font to be the specific branded font. Oh, I want it to be the branding color. So I dug into the bundled up JavaScript, and then I was trying to figure out, oh, how did they do it? Because with the bundled up JavaScript is so much harder to interpret than the normal JavaScript. And then I went in, I went in deep, and
In
and
the
then
Matrix, man, this is crazy.
yeah, I went in deep and then explored, and there were a lot of trial and error and a lot of user testing, and that ended up making the website, and they
That's
are
awesome.
implementing
So,
it.
so you've mentioned open source a couple
That's cool.
times, which I feel like when we talked about last time, when we talked about it this at the Greenpoint Film Festival, it came up a couple times, which I always found interesting because like I am such a huge supporter of open source, just because I wouldn't have really ever been able to learn like 3D software if it weren't for Blender, which is an open source project. So there's definitely I have an affinity for it just through that. But I'm also curious, is there some sort of advantage right now, or what is your perspective on right now? We have open source models, and then now we're getting sort of these more privatized models, right? Like Meta has Llama, we have ChatGPT with OpenAI and some of the models that they're building, which are sort of proprietary and specific to those companies. What do you think are some of the maybe advantages or disadvantages of maybe both sides of it, right? So like, why would you choose an open source platform versus maybe a privatized platform that's maybe more built out, like ChatGPT or OpenAI that OpenAI provides?
Right. So for me, open source is a way for me to get into more like helpful for rapid prototyping, because at the very beginning, I don't want to invest a lot of money. I can invest my time, but not a lot of money, because what if I want to scale it more? Would it make more sense if I do open source, or would it make more sense if I go for the non-open source solutions, because they may provide a more mature product that may work well in a scalable situation.
Right.
So that would be
So just because you use an open source platform to start a project doesn't mean that's necessarily the platform you're going to finish on.
Yes.
Smart.
Yeah. It also depends on the budget too. Like if you're working with a client and the client wants more ease of use rather than hosting the personal open source whatever server you have going on, maybe that would accrue more money in the long run, versus if you want to do like a temporary activation using XR related, like Eighth Wall.
Right.
They provide a very like finished solution and very mature, and they give you analytics. If the client wants that and they have the budget, why not use that? But if you are a company who is doing more like a customized solution using XR or other platforms, but you want to sort of compete with Eighth Wall, you can create your own using open source. But the way you charge your client is the time that you put into making your own private solution.
Yeah, and it's funny because I was also going to ask, my next follow-up would have been, are there another kind of gray area, I think, for a lot of people that maybe have toyed around with AI or generative AI or text to image, those kind of solutions. One thing I think that in that space that's being talked about a lot is what are the legal ramifications, or what are the IP implications of using tools like this? Do you ever hear specific things from clients when you start a project that they say, oh, you actually can't use open source because you'll be using proprietary data, or, we want you to use open source? Is there any sort of indications from their side of things, how they're thinking about these kind of solutions legally?
So actually, I personally have not encountered that kind of scenario, because a lot of clients, they sort of require a little bit of education in terms of the technical side. So most of the time we make a decision internally. And I can talk about like how I would do things. If like personal projects, I would educate the client and then let them know it is a potential risk if they're more designs heavy and more for like, oh, I do not want to have any style that's associated with the artist, because I don't want to be like I want to make my own art rather than style in other artists, then I would try to see if it's possible to not gear towards that, but still use AI if that's a required.
That's
You know.
interesting. I'm very curious about kind of your XR work and kind of your experience in that. Can you just indulge us in some of your experiences and, again, maybe some projects you've worked on recently?
Yes. So the projects I've worked on recently were all XR simulations. There's one is for a financial institute. So how we did it was to figure out what kind of curriculum they want to include and how they ideally want to include that in their XR, in their teaching. So they had their in-person teaching, and they also have all the old school situation where you learn stuff, you take exams. And we proposed to be like, why don't we work together and create like a final exam, but that's in the conference room in the XR, where you can have different mini games, and then you have pop quizzes everywhere, and then people work together trying to figure out what is the right answer and what is not. And they said, oh yeah, let's do it. So we created a environment with 8 different stations with interactive games. Each games have different objects that's related about robotic process automation, because it's a financial institute. They are trying to guide accountants in real world situation. And the last part, which is the most proud part that I've made, was to include 3D visualization of the robotic process automation in terms of how they can make decisions based on the 3D data, which they can select 3 elements to see, oh, the data changes because of the other element, so that they can make a decision to be like, this is more risky and I should rank it the top. And then once they come up with the top 10, they can talk to the professor and be like, this is our answer and this is the reasoning. And then the professor will be able to say, oh, you did right or not.
That's so fun. That's so fun. I mean,
I wish that any of the employee training that I had to do was in a VR headset with mini games and an interactive, like it's funny because I actually remember even being internal at a company, that got to be fairly sizable. So they started rolling out a lot of, there was required mandatory training that we had to do every, 3 to 6 months or whatever. It was also actually a financial services, like cloud computing company. So, there's so much red tape and legal around like anything related to financial documentation. So I was taking, I'm a designer, but I'm taking stuff on like financial regulation and all that kind of thing. And it was funny because I remember I think there was at the time Salesforce had rolled out some sort of solution that was like a training portal, and like they tried to gamify it a little bit, but like at the end of the day, no one ever wanted to do the required trainings. It's like, and I know that's a huge sort of like a recurring thread throughout all of your work, whether it's for a client or even maybe some of the personal projects you've worked on. I feel like you're so focused on how do I use these tools to teach people things, right? Like in this case, it's teaching them hard skills, maybe about how to do their job better. But, you also have projects where you're kind of focused way more on the soft skills and like the emotional things, like the Sixth Sense project, which we talked a little bit about. I would love for you to share just a little bit more, for people who might not be familiar, what the Sixth Sense project was and what you were trying to do with education with that project.
Yes. So I'm very proud of making the Sixth Sense project with my team, because it's very related with healthcare and then trying to improve the awareness of people with schizophrenia. And so the whole experience is you are wearing Magic Clip 1, and then you are going down an aisle where we calibrated the position of like alarm, random books, and the TV. But we focus mainly on the auditory hallucination, because for people who are experiencing schizophrenia, they actually hear more hallucination rather than seeing. Yeah. So that was some of the findings we did during the research, and then we geared towards more auditory hallucination. And yeah, it was wild, and we demoed that at Games for Change, and a lot of medical um, staff actually came over and then talked about their wish to have something like that for their hospitals or clinics, so that people can actually put themselves in the shoes of people who experience schizophrenia, because it seems like a sort of taboo thing to talk about. Like for me, even for me now to talk about, um, because I don't have schizophrenia, I feel like I can't really talk about it. So I think the application that we wanted to make is to make sure that to spread the awareness, and then have people talk about it, and then share share their opinions and thoughts and feelings, so that they can, it's a empathy building tool as well, because you don't know, maybe other people is also suffering from schizophrenia and they just don't have the chance to bring it up. Like during dinner, how would you,
Yeah.
you know?
Can you pass the bread, by the way? No, yeah, that's so real. I mean, that's such a, you're giving a tool and a resource for people to be able to maybe bridge those conversations more easily. But it's funny you mentioned like the taboo around maybe not just schizophrenia, but mental health issues in general, or any of the sort of social, mental, emotional health things that people struggle with. There's taboo around all of them, but it sounds like, you mentioned a research phase, right? So like when you set out to build something that's trying to tackle some of these larger issues, it sounds like you're certainly doing your research in order to get it right. So for you, what does your research phase look like? Before, take the technology out of it, before you even start thinking about what headset am I going to use, what render engine, all of that stuff. What kind of research do you do outside of that when you're given a brief, like sort of the Sixth Sense project?
Right. So for me, I would think about the purpose of the project. What's the end goal? Is it to help people be more empathetic, or is it to, I don't know, achieve certain goal for your client? And I would also think about the timeline. When we were making the project, it was very short time. Like we were on a time crunch, and if we had more time, we would definitely look into in terms of research and then polish the project a bit more. And then for me, in terms of the research phase, I would teamwork is very awesome. If you have a person in the team that's very research focused, I would definitely be like, oh, expert, you go there, you go do that. And then for me, in terms of research, I would definitely look through a lot of papers that's related about, for instance, schizophrenia, and then see what are the like the common knowledge of their findings. And then what we did also included research for people that we know that has schizophrenia. So one of my teammates' brother had schizophrenia, and then she's the one who brought the idea, and she has a lot of real life experiences, so that's good. So for from my point of view, it's very crucial for you to do research and in-depth interview if you can, to figure out your use base. Like if you are trying to figure out the condition of schizophrenia, you should talk to somebody who has schizophrenia, or maybe go to the hospitals and talk to the staff that's treating people with schizophrenia, so that you can have different parts of supporting evidence for your research, like the existing papers, real interviews, and focus groups, before making a decision and before making the design of how you can solve how you can like achieve the goal by certain, like the way that you want to lead the story, the way that you
Right.
want the user experience.
And it's funny because I feel like it's such a that it I don't know, it makes more sense in this sort of future tech space because there, in many ways, it feels like all the rules are sort of being written right now as we go. But I also have found, I don't know, just personally, and you both are creative professionals and, work with other creatives all the time. I feel like one thing that a lot of people have struggled with, myself included, even after years of doing creative work, is like that part of the process of like actually taking a minute to think, what problem am I trying to solve? Who is my audience? I think so. It's so easy to get caught up in the, like, I just want to make stuff look cool. Like I saw this thing on Instagram. I'm inspired by it. I want to replicate it. I almost feel like the way you pursue a project for XR is like, there's so many lessons to be learned from that, even if you're not doing XR, where it's like, before you sit down and start moving any pixels around, do you actually understand your motivation for doing it? It's so important.
Thank you. Yeah, because I feel like everybody can learn how to use technology. Like, the thing that I learned the most from my grad program, which is an interactive telecommunication program from NYU, is that you can do whatever you want, but you need to think about the consequences of you making things. You can, like, just because you can make it doesn't mean that you need to.
Yeah, we need to get Sam Altman in that program. Yeah.
This is a bit of an aside, but you mentioned NYU. Did you do any of your work? What is the studio over in the Navy Yard?
I love Todd.
Yeah, exactly. Todd.
Yeah.
So we've met Todd. We actually did a tour of the space. Sorry, what's the name of the studio? It's or Studio 7 or something like that. I don't know if that's right, but I'd have to look. I always forget.
It's Building 22nd.
Okay, yeah. Building 22. Yeah, that sounds right. So have you done some of your work there? I think it's so fascinating that NYU has like got such a great space for XR experiences.
Yeah. So my professor Todd Bryant, I actually took one of his classes. It's called Virtual Production, and I actually went there, and it's during pandemic too. So we learned about Unreal and how to do motion capture and how to do all the cool stuff. You can record a video on your phone in front of a white background or green screen, and then you can just abstract the animation, the rigging animation from your video and apply it to an avatar. And then I did that in Unreal. It's so unreal. It's so fun. Yeah, it's so
That's
fun.
Amazing.
And that lab used to have a mini version of what they have right now. Is motion capture based, and then they have a big screen. And right now they have a curved huge screen, and then they have powerful computers, and they have a lot of trackers in just one room. And then they have a room that has a 360 capture, like a lot of cameras capturing.
Yeah, volumetric, right?
Yeah.
Is
like
it
all the
video
little-
volumetric or just photo
I
You
think
volumetric?
can do videos too.
I think it's video. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen the video volumetrics. That's so
It's like,
wild.
it's honestly insane. And correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it also in collaboration with like some New York based studios? Like do certain studios, like they provide maybe the equipment, but then they're allowed to like use that space for stuff? Or
I think so. I don't quote me on this because I'm not that familiar.
You don't work at NYU?
Yeah, I don't work in NYU, but I think they do collaboration, and then
Right.
You can also apply for something there. Not really sure about residency, but you can.
Right. Something to that effect, maybe.
Yeah,
it's such a cool space. The other thing I loved, I mean, it's like, I don't know. I still think it's very cool, but it's the, they built the hydraulic chair, that you could simulate a roller coaster ride, and you would sit in this chair, and they were using, I can't remember what they were sending the data over, but effectively they're sending data like out of Unreal. It's being transcribed or like translated into electricity, which is then being sent to this hydraulic chair that you're in, so that like when you're at a certain part of the ride, like the right side of your chair lifts up, as you turn to the other side, the other side lifts up. And then they
Yeah.
had like Dolby 5.1 surround, so you're just like in the
Oh,
screen.
yeah.
It's so cool. I mean, it's
I guess
fantastic.
that's a good place to learn how to make the 4D experience theater.
Yes. Todd had for I think starting a year ago, he started a curriculum about theme park. So that's one of the theme park
Right.
aside, like the final product. And I actually also tried the roller coaster. They had a fan too. It triggers the fan.
I don't think
So
I
it's
got the fan.
multi-sensory, and it was crazy. It was so good for like a prototype, and I
Yeah.
can see how it can. Did you wear the glasses?
I
when-
didn't. I feel like
Oh,
I feel like I
wow.
gotta go back now. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you got it.
And
So
what did you do? Just sit in the chair, Andrew?
I sat in the chair and there was a giant, I mean, a huge TV in front of me, like
Yeah,
ginormous,
yeah.
and it was on the
Wow.
TV. And then there were like, you know, the speakers all placed like literally like measured out so that as soon as you sat in that chair, you just like even just sonically, you're in a different space. Like
Yes.
it hits
Wow.
different. Yeah, it was very cool. And I honestly, the other thing I think of, Mikey, I remember when you went and saw Way of the Water. The last Avatar movie, you saw it in
The
what do they
first
call
or
it?
fourth time I saw it.
right. Do they call it was it 4D or 5D? I don't know what they call it.
Yeah,
like
the
theater.
4D is what they always call it.
But was that the one where they're
Yeah.
like squirting you with water and like the fans are going and like it's
you know, it's
So-
a little adventure. I always love like when you bring popcorn and it's just like going all over the place. It's like all right, do I get at least 50% discount? It's ridiculous.
That's so
honestly.
funny.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, as fun as it is, I feel like I'm not a super 4D. I could see it more in a single screen experience, but I've or I could see it maybe in certain movies, but I just feel like that movie was so beautiful that I am just like mesmerized. But when it's like shaking you all over the place and you got the glasses on, and it was a little like I liked it a little more when I was just chilling and able to just be mesmerized. But if I was watching if I was watching something like Top Gun, though, you know, and you're in a F-16 doing backflips, like, oh yeah, put me in that chair.
Yeah.
Yes, action.
Yeah, exactly.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
So I am just so excited about the future of XR, and I love to bring it back a little bit about the finance thing. I might have said this before, but I still think that one of the coolest things for 3D and VR, I think the finance industry would have the best use case for it, because there's so many knock-on effects when it comes to finance. From, you know, one country starts trading here, and then that means lithium's getting traded at a different price, and that means this country, and it's so hard when you have so many charts. But if you were to able to visualize all of this data in a depth aspect, game changer. Like, you'd be able to actually understand the tweaking of or even just tweaking one knob and seeing how it affects everything across the globe.
Yeah, data visualization, I feel like, is a huge vertical for I mean, think about like infographics, even how infographics in like the web era blew up, right? Like everyone loves a good infographic. Everyone loves an animated infographic. The natural next progression is like, give me like the Batman console from like, you know, when he's like sitting looking at all the sonar or whatever. He's got like a million screens in front of him, you know, being able to visualize data and how it impacts other data, right? Like you tweak one thing and you can see how it affects the whole system. That is certainly a like next level application of that, I feel like.
Hey, you know what would be a fun thing to do too is when you see how much $1 billion is versus $100. In one sense, when you see the comparison, you're still just looking at it on a 4-inch cell phone screen. But put that into a VR where you're seeing what was the Duck McScrooge thing where the money goes through the roof.
Oh, wow.
like, oh my God.
Has no one done that yet?
I don't know. I feel like we
That's a
gotta.
good idea.
We're gonna edit this part out.
Yeah, I mean, that's literally, I could do that. I feel like that's like 30 minutes. Like you model $1 bill and then you just, you know, do it to scale. Give me $1 billion.
Wait, let's get John Lepore on the line.
Hey, John, are you there?
Imagine you have all the money like just put on top of you.
Yeah, literally. Ground
You
yourself.
just push.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of a nice segue too, to just talk maybe a little bit, obviously as someone who's so ingrained in some of these technologies and actually completing projects and, delivering things that clients are paying for and exploring and researching, you're probably one of the most well-suited guests we've had to be able to weigh on the next question, which is, from an economic standpoint and from just like a socially accepted standpoint, what do you think is next for XR? And I know that's an umbrella term, but that can include VR, AR, artificial intelligence. Where do you see it all going, and what do you think is like the most exciting thing on the horizon?
I think people are sort of steering away from VR and leaning more into AR. As you can see, a lot of companies have created AR glasses, like spectacle. Yeah. So I'm excited about the AR products XR because it's proven that companies have been investing and creating a lot of AR glasses, which means people are gonna buy those glasses, and then a lot of developers are gonna start putting out content. And then with AR glasses being lighter than VR glasses and more like portable in the sense, and as you can see from Ray-Ban, a lot of influencers have been doing like the trend of videos just recording through the Ray-Ban glasses. I think there will be another trend, a similar trend with AR glasses.
Yeah.
So I think it's going up in terms of the popularity of AR glasses, and then there will be more openings for developers, designers, creators to create things in the AR glasses and populate and generate more content for the community.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, all that stuff that's already built on using Spark, it's just needed to be, I mean, the platform's there, it's meta. Now you just have glasses and you can be using those filters in real times, So it's an interesting future. And, we have Snapchat that's also trying to pave the way as well. So you're seeing, it's funny how much competition really does spark innovation, because as soon as Snapchat goes, hey guys, we are releasing some little screenshots of our glasses, Mark Zuckerberg's like, yeah, well, we also have some new AR features being built in.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they're probably just cooking on all these projects behind closed doors and waiting for other people. It's like, I don't think it's a coincidence that there's always a call and response, right? It's like someone says, it happened with AI models in general, right? It's like OpenAI's like, we have ChatGPT. Within 3 months, how many versions of Gemini from Google drops?
Exactly.
It's like they have the resources and like they're working in the back room somewhere, and then the second they're needed, they're like, all right, showtime, come on, like let's start cranking it out.
The developers, we're not ready yet. We're going live. It's
I don't envy anyone on the product teams of those products. I'll say that much.
Yeah.
But you're right. And I was going to bring this up too, Mikey. Like, Mikey was one of the first people I knew that had the Apple Vision Pro. And one of the first conversations we had about it, I know this is a bit of, this isn't AR glasses, but it was obviously a pretty big VR headset drop. And I remember, Mikey, like the first thing we talked about was that there was no ecosystem for developers to, the developers had just gotten their hands on it and things were just starting to be built with it. So you got this like beautiful headset, like all of the Apple design magic, yada, yada. Sure, it has its flaws, but like you're pretty much enthralled with it out of the box. And then you put it on and you're like, oh, I can use Microsoft Word.
Yeah.
There's no
still trending in the marketplace.
And it's joking. Funny you bring up the Ray-Ban glasses. I remember 3 years ago or 2 years ago seeing the Ray-Ban glasses and being like, this is ridiculous and it's never gonna catch on. And like, sure enough, the glasses are still around and people are definitely using them, So it is interesting because I feel like this space has always just been ahead of the curve, and like it does always feel not even bleeding edge. Some of it feels like kind of ridiculous. And then, 2 years go by and you're like, oh yeah, of course that exists. And of course everyone's using that,
This sounds crazy. You ready for this? I don't even like this. I love this idea, but it scares me. But if you were to have these AI glasses that were kind of always a camera involved, and also Apple's building in cameras into headphones. I think that's a rumor, but maybe it's not. It was for like extra. I'll get back to that. But using your glasses, and if it has a camera on it, what could be cool is Kevin. What's his last name? We just had a guy in our Discord.
Edzanga?
Yeah.
He
just made a video recently on
Trancor. Just look up Trancor. Yeah.
Kevin Trancor. Yeah. He just made a video about how to spot AI images, and it was pretty much showing that there is different types of photo noise that comes about. So when you take a picture of something, there's noise patterns that usually is affected by depth, but when AI makes it, it doesn't comprehend really the depth a lot of times. So it has really weird noise patterns that don't make sense
and stuff
you really couldn't see. But what would be interesting is, what I was just thinking is, if you were wearing glasses and it could auto detect AI for you, so you're
I'm sure you could build that, Mikey. Get to work, buddy.
What am I doing? Cut the podcast.
Hop off.
Where's Mark Zuckerberg? I gotta give him a call. Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta start writing all those ideas in one place.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, but I do agree with you. I think like AR is gonna be, and it's interesting. Like the light wear, I feel just the fact that you can wear it comfortably is 10 times more effective than having technology that's 20 years ahead of the curve.
Right.
If it's uncomfortable to wear, you're just not going to wear it. you know.
And a lot of people are not going to wear it. So, like, what are you building this for? If you're just building it for yourself, sure. But if you're trying to ship it, you don't have a lot of audience. That doesn't sustainable for your finance.
Right.
Yeah.
In this economy?
Very true. Very true. So I guess we can also jump a little bit into maybe, we've mentioned AI a couple times, and I know that you have talked about using ChatGPT to, maybe help structure some of the earlier parts of your process in creative work. What are your thoughts on AI? How do you see that impacting creativity and storytelling? And, maybe what are some of the pitfalls or some of the rewards that creatives can expect if they decide to start using that in their work?
Yes. I said it in the panel at Green Point Festival before, but I will say it again. If I keep using AI, if I just let AI tell me what to do, I'll feel very stupid. So I find it very helpful for me to ask AI to ask me questions. So for instance, if I'm trying to come up with an idea that would utilize all my skills. Right now I'm learning Next.js, Tailwind, CSS for work, but I also want to do something personal for myself. So I would say, show me some categories that I should think of, but I'm not thinking of, by incorporating all of this. And then a good way for AI to learn is to give them examples. You can give them several examples to be like, one of the ideas I have using these tools is to create a portfolio site. And then AI will give you some ideas that you may not be able to think of on your own, but I consider AI more as a collaborative partner in terms of generating ideas, in terms of coming up with creative solutions for certain pipelines. AI definitely helps to improve the efficiency of my workflow, which I'm super grateful. And now I've been using different kinds of platforms. Back at the panel, I was only using ChatGPT, and now I use Perplexity and ChatGPT and Claude. So Claude is more for coding. Perplexity is more for, I use it more for advice. It's like a random life situation. I'll be like, oh, I want to travel to Europe and I'm planning to spend 10 days. I want to go to 4 cities. What's the best way with shortest commutes between different cities? And then Perplexity basically gives me the itinerary for all the things. I actually used it to plan my family trip.
Nice.
Wow,
Just
that's
So
great.
cool.
you're just the
Great.
hero for your family. You're just like, yeah, I planned it all. I spent all this time putting
Yeah.
together this itinerary. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
It's so helpful to do those, like those kind of planning does not require any learning. So I would just let AI go off, right? But like anything that I want to learn, right now I'm learning more about AI, so I'm taking a class. Anything I want to learn, I try to avoid using AI to just give me the straight answer, because that's how I would lose my creative mind.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think that if you're just asking it for answers, you're
Mhm.
definitely kind of losing brain cells right there. And as well, I myself even say, can you explain your reasoning behind your answers?
Mhm.
And that way it's kind of doing a further breakdown so I can analyze why it came to these conclusions.
Yeah.
And like you said, I think it's great when you ask for it to ask you questions.
Mhm.
And are there other things that I might be thinking of, or saying where else should I be looking?
Yes.
And I think it's so easy just to be like, this is a thing that gives me answers. It's like, no, this is a thing that should be helping you figure out how to
Can
get to your
facilitate
destination.
knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like, or help you guide it, which is
Yes.
yeah, the new preview. I don't know if you've tried the Preview 01 model that just came out a week and a half ago, but it's really cool. I mean, I'm pretty impressed by it. It's fascinating. So, I want to jump into just some XR stuff again, back into it, because I'm curious, because again, always fun to have some developers on here, but what are your thoughts when it comes to the future of building this technology from a software perspective? Are you more on the Unreal side? Are you more on the Unity side? What's your thoughts there?
I prefer not to take sides, but
Very,
my
very
company-
diplomatic answer.
yes, that's me. For all the most of the projects I've worked on, I'm using Unity, and I've also used Unreal for certain projects before, but never for XR related, but more for like cinematography, film editing. Those are so cool, and I enjoy it because I have a film production background, and I also try to use the blueprints to create the exact same thing that I was making in Unity. It's not even XR related, it's just simply sending OSC messages using the blueprints is so messy when I can just have one script in Unity to finish what I wanted. So it was too messy for me. I love organization. So if people want to get into it, if you want to make Unreal, if your goal is to create beautiful visuals, yeah, you can use Unreal. But if you want to get things done, and then it involves a lot of interactions and mechanics behind it, Unity is still my favorite to get.
Nice. That's a good comparison, though.
Together.
It sounds very fair. I mean, I haven't spent much time in either, to be honest, but I feel like when I just anecdotally, the projects I see completed pretty much fall in that category. Like Unreal is the people that I see using Unreal that are really excited about it, I think are specifically excited about the sort of like you even mentioned cinematography, Dune using it for pre-production to like plan their cinematography to the T, like those kind of use cases seem to be popping up more and more, and maybe start feeling a little bit less interactive and less, engaged with the audience.
Yeah, and a lot of VR related applications that use Unreal, they still have to rely on PC computers. So they are PC VR, they are not actually Android VR. So you cannot, you have to bring it along. You have to bring the desktop along with your experiences. It's so hard to install too. If you want to showcase your projects, it's just not reasonable.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's I feel like Unity is meant almost for these VR, AR experiences, especially when it comes to using something like a Quest 3 that's a standalone. It's almost harder to dumb down Unreal quality wise to work on the headset to get it, whereas Unity you're kind of building up and Unreal you're almost building down in certain aspects. But it's I've every good project I've made has been in Unity. I don't think I've successfully had a non-tethered experience in Unreal Engine. We should look for someone. I know we had Dasani who worked on one game. I'm very curious to see how he finished that. Yeah, he's a local meetup comer, if you will. He's always coming to the meetups every month, but he's it's a shooter game, but so it's a little straightforward. It's a little
I see.
So what else is there here? I'm very curious. So talking a little bit about the future, what projects, if you had $1 million, what would be a dream project for you?
So remember the suggestion to keep all the ideas in one? I'm currently curating all my wild ideas in one because I always have ideas and then they just disappear if I don't put them down. So I'm still curating them. So with all those money, I will just implement them one by one depending on the impact. Ranking the top impacts first, of course, and then just fulfill my creative mind.
Yiting's answer would be like, I have 50 million projects that I want to work on. So honestly, $1 million isn't going to be enough. I'm going to need 10 or 50 or 100 or that's awesome.
Yeah, you can grow money using money. So the abundance of, you just have to start. And then if people are into the project that you make, you can always rinse and repeat. This is me learning from a lot of financial investment related reels.
So what would be one because I feel like I'm always under the mindset that the reason why the Apple Vision Pro hasn't taken off like it is, the Quest hasn't, is because we haven't had those breakthrough apps. Cell phones, iPhone 1, 2, 3. I mean, they were using Zippo lighters. They were, the little apps, the beer thing. There was nothing actually functional that made you say, I need to have this. But it was kind of that social media. It was some of those photo apps. What do you have any thoughts on what kind of maybe an app would make people come on every single day onto a VR or AR or 3D?
I see. If everybody has one, and if they have, VR chat is one of the way. It's a sort of like a VR social media. So on phone, we connect people nowadays more and more through social media. And if everybody has VR or AR, they can just get on because their friends are on. So that's a way to engage people because other people are on. The way to introduce a new technology into a large group of people is to make them see the benefit of it. So VR chat is one of the good examples to lure people in and then start sharing about how beneficial it is or maybe not. Things like that. It's more about, I feel like all the ideas that I want to make they're all about making people connecting with each other more. So it's all the same. Like us doing podcast is we get to know each other too. It's not just you asking me questions. I'm also learning more about you, the way you respond, the way you engage. It's all two-way interaction. So yeah, my goal is just to make the distance between people smaller and get to know other people So all the ideas like the music video generator I've been working on is to bridge the gap, because a lot of my musician friends, I know they are low budget. They don't have any budget for videos, and I also don't have any money for like videos. I'm a musician. I occasionally make music, and so I was thinking from that point of view to try to create something like automate something for my musician friends so that they can reach the level that they deserve, because a lot of times social media is very fast in terms of content creation, and you sort of have to feed into the algorithm by creating more. But how can you create more content like in video format when your focus is on music? So that's the goal of me trying to make a music video generator, so that you don't have to put too much thought into making the video, but to focus on your music generator.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I definitely think simplifying experiences and products for people to be able to create more fluently and easier, more easily is definitely the way to go.
I love the quote of bringing, making the gap between people smaller is so important, especially today where, and this would be a whole other podcast episode if we jumped into it, but there is like the dark side to all of the future technology, and there is the concern about disinformation and people being, manipulated and lied to, and, wedges being driven between people. So, and the truth is we probably don't even need to talk about it on this podcast, because there's already enough people talking about that. I think actually what has been so interesting about seeing you and your work, Yiting, is that like you are doing something, the total antithesis of that. You're working at it from the other side of it, which is like, so no, I'm serious. I think that's very, those are the stories that I think people need to hear more of, because to be honest, I feel like I've always been maybe a bit of a skeptic or a cynic when it comes to some of this stuff. And the more I learn about it and the more I engage with people that are using it in really creative ways and in ways that resonate with me as someone who like loves to know people better and talk to people, and human connection is like, I thrive on that. So it's like when I see the project you're doing, I'm like, this is what we need more of. We need more stuff that this all should be a way to bring us closer together, not drive us further apart. So I loved that quote. So we are coming up on the end here. I did want to ask you, do you have any exciting projects you're working on right now that you want people to keep an eye out for? Do you have anything coming up? And, just how can the audience stay in touch with you and your work?
Perfect. I would love to keep in touch, and people can follow me on Yiting in Tech. Is my Instagram accounts. I occasionally post cool tech events that I go to, as well as the updates of my upcoming app. I'm thinking of having a small use base to have them tested out before actually shipping them. It's called Vibes, and it's a music video generator app that you takes whatever audio you have and generates a video based on AI prompt that you would put, as well as different shaders and different visual effects on top of it. And all of those react to the music. And then in the end, you have the video. And this is one of the way to fight against the rapid content creation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so are you looking for beta testers? Are you looking for people to maybe use that?
Actually,
Or
yes. Thank you.
So maybe if anyone is a musician who's listening to this, maybe they could reach out to you and see if they could benefit from your tool.
Yes, please. You can just DM me.
Awesome.
Amazing.
And we will be sure to link all your socials in the show notes. We'll give you shouts out on all of our social media when we post this, of course, because it is always a pleasure to talk to you. I hope you enjoyed chatting with us again as much as we enjoyed chatting with you.
Yes,
I'm sure we'll be having you back on once you have some apps launched and more exciting projects to talk about. So thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Thank you so much, Andrew and Mikey. It's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed our conversation.